Well, welcome to our panel on the video game industry. I'm Geoff Keighley from the Game Awards, and we'll quickly have everyone introduce themselves as well.
Hi there, Johanna Faries, president of Blizzard Entertainment, and we are based in Irvine, California.
Hi, Laura Miele, president of Electronic Arts Entertainment and Central Development, and we are located everywhere. We have studios all over the globe.
Hi, Gregory Milken, managing director of 1AM Gaming, a venture capital fund investing in early stage gaming companies and located here in Los Angeles.
And I'm Donald Mustard. I'm a partner at AGBO Films with Joe and Anthony Russo, and we make movies and video games, and we're going to talk about all sorts of fun stuff today.
Amazing. Well, this is such an incredible panel because we have a lot of different aspects of the gaming industry represented. And, you know, gaming is such a broad term these days, right? Because it can mean so many different things to different people, but it is such an exciting industry. I'm sure many of you are here because you're aware of the scale and scope of gaming is really the biggest form of entertainment in the world. And even though, you know, the industry is only really 50 years young, we're entering a fascinating new era for games. And there certainly have been challenges in this industry like any other, but it's an exciting time. And I really want to spend this next hour kind of talking to this panel about where we've been, where we're going with the game industry. And also, if you have questions, there's a QR code that'll pop up, and you can put in your questions, and we'll leave plenty of time that we can have Q&A with this incredible panel. But I wanted to start just kind of get an overview from everyone here, and then we'll dive into specific topics. But the industry, as I said, it's 50 years on, but we're at a really fascinating inflection point for the industry. And yes, there have been layoffs. Yes, there's the challenges of AI and all the things that any entertainment business faces right now. But I want to go down and ask everyone, what do you think sort of the biggest structural changes that's happening in the industry right now? Like, what is that inflection point from everyone's perspective? And sort of what is the opportunity around that? And also, what are the challenges really that the industry faces right now? Johanna, I'll start with you.
I'll be quick.
Yeah.
I'm going to wax optimistic in a rare moment for gaming in this moment. I use the keyword poised a lot. I think the industry, yes, is at an inflection point, but we're poised to sort of broaden relevance in a way that I think has been a long time coming. Whether that's into linear media, film, TV, scripted, theatrical, whether that means how people adopt understand the vastness of the industry and start to want to work in it from a workforce development perspective. But I do think it is really primed to go from typically undercovered in mainstream outlets or misunderstood in terms of the communities that we scale globally, and to really expand its relevance and dominance. I think we're poised. The challenge with being poised is that we have to kind of meet that moment with different skill sets, different business models, different partnership models to be able to show up in all of these different places. But I actually think it's an extremely exciting time for velocity.
I like it. Like the optimism.
Yeah.
Laura, do you share the same optimism?
I do. I think that we are in an inflection point. I agree with you about that, and that we can't deny that. However, I think our greatest days are still ahead in gaming. We're going through some cyclical changes, some structural changes, cyclical coming off of some massive expansion in the last 5 years in the industry. And we're adapting to that and coming off of slower growth than we've experienced before. And then there's some significant structural changes happening in business models, how players consume content and how they engage in it. But I have never been more optimistic about what lies ahead for so many reasons. Our growth is significant. There are about 130 million babies born every year, and they are all gamers as far as we are concerned, because now in these new generations, gaming is the preferred media and the preferred form of entertainment. And we already have close to 4 billion gamers around the world and a world population of 8 billion. So we have this amazing foundation, and then we also have this tremendous growth ahead of us. And what we're going to talk about today in the panel, hopefully we get into, is why technology, innovation, and pure consumer behavior and consumer patterns are evolving and changing, which create a significant durability in our space and in this industry. I'll also say, and just add a note for all of us who have been in the industry for a long time, this industry has always been and transition and innovation and change. And I've been in this for 30 years. I like to say I started when I was in middle school. I really didn't, but for 30 years, I have seen, and at any moment, it just feels like, oh, wow, this is existential. This change is so fast, and I can't get my arms around it. It feels like it's a little out of control. If you wind back 15 years ago, going from packaged goods to digital, to platform transitions, to game genre evolution, it just always feels like, oh, this is it. This is the biggest point of change. And so we are certainly in that moment right now, but we know change will never be this slow again. And so, and we always have emerged with growth. We've always have emerged with higher quality experiences, and we've always have emerged with greater player relationships and connections. So I am optimistic, and I hope we can get into some of the more details.
I was going to say, get into some of the changes and some of the opportunities, but also the challenges. Greg, you come at this from a really interesting perspective, looking at kind of the broad industry and investment and teams and structure. What do you see this inflection point being right now?
Yeah, well, as people said, I think there's great opportunity now. So I think it's easier for people to make games. So looking at it from the game development side, in terms of what technology and AI is enabling, there's a lot more people who are now capable of making games, given the tools that they have available. So I think that opens up opportunity for more different types of games.
I think it was like 18,000 games came out on Steam last year, or something crazy like that.
Yes. So hopefully see more new, different, interesting game experiences. And different types of games, but then also the challenge there, as you mentioned, is discoverability. So I think we're constantly wrestling with the fact that as it becomes more and more open, then there's more and more product. How do you get that in front of people? How do you get them to notice it and market it, and so that there's awareness of what you're building and putting out there?
Yep, absolutely. Donald, you come at it from a really interesting perspective, having done incredible work at Epic on Fortnite and at Chair before then, and now at AGBO, kind of blending film, TV, gaming all together, which is really exciting. As Johanna mentioned, that's a huge opportunity moving forward. But what do you see as this sort of inflection point? You probably look at it more from a content perspective of how things are going to change.
Yeah, so when I was about 30 years ago, when I was in film school, I was taking a bunch of different art and computer graphics and all sorts of different stuff, and I had decided that I was going to devote my life to telling stories. I'm a storyteller and an artist, and there was a part of me that was like, am I just going to focus all my time on film, on more kind of linear expressions of how you entertain people and how you tell stories? But I also grew up playing video games, and really I don't even kind of think of games as games. It was more about this interactive worlds, interactive storytelling. And it seemed like there was, at the time, kind of what Laura said, it was such a fluid and emerging medium, in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And I was looking at it going, I think that if I had put my time in that field, what I'll see over the next 30 years will be the birth of kind of the ultimate medium that combines everything we've learned as humans over the last thousands of years of how to tell stories, how to create art, whether that's in books or film or painting, whatever it is. Video games combine all of it. And then even more so because you're putting people into worlds where they have agency. They have influence and control over what we make for them. And to me, that was just it was so exciting, and it felt like I would and we would be able to do much more kind of pioneering work. And that's what we've seen. So I agree with Laura. I think it's been fluid the whole time. I think it's been, and I don't think it's set. I think we are just starting to actually dig into the surface of what this medium offers. Yep. And the technology is better than ever. The opportunities are better than ever. There are so many people now born into this world that experience this medium and are going to become the storytellers and the artists and the creators of the future. And they're going to do it in this medium. And I even think it might evolve into a whole kind of different thing, and we get to shepherd that in. So I think the grass is so green, and it just goes and goes, right? And so yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
All right, we're all hyped, but there is the reality of where the business is right now. Maybe I'll start, Greg, with you on this of the business models and the the way games are made, what doesn't work anymore, what business models today are going to be durable for the next decade, and which ones are at risk and rapidly changing. Get your
Yeah, well, I think some of the misconception is a lot of people have tried to fit into one business model, and I don't think there necessarily is one business model. I think there's been a lot of focus on free to play.
Yep.
I think that's been frustrating. Hasn't worked really well on the mobile side. Hasn't worked really well and doesn't translate to all PC games and consoles.
work for Fortnite though, right?
Well,
Yeah,
yes.
it did.
Well,
It did, but
yeah.
and I
Go ahead.
don't mean to cut you up, but when I was designing Fortnite, there wasn't really a lot of free games that were like the experience I was designing for Fortnite. But in crafting Fortnite, I was extremely deliberate, and we at Epic were extremely deliberate in everything that we were building in the experience of what is Fortnite to be able to utilize it being a free experience that we could give to a wide audience. And just because that applied to what I was directly trying to accomplish with Fortnite doesn't mean that fits for everything. If I had tried to apply that model to some of the other games I've made, that wouldn't have worked because the way I was designing that experience just needed a different business model. I think what's exciting now is because there's such a wide audience and because there's so many different diverse opportunities that you can build the game, the experience you want to create, and then apply a correct business model for that experience for your audience.
Yes, and free to play was backed up by Epic. When we're looking at investment for game developers, a lot of these game developers aren't coming from the ground up to have the capabilities to support a live service free to play type game. So
the amount of investment it takes over time.
Yes, it takes a long time. It takes a large team.
Yeah.
And so I think from the business model perspective, we need to look back to paying up front. For games. Go back to that model a lot. A lot of companies
Go back to the $70, $80, whatever dollar box product.
Well, also flexibility and price point. I think that's a debate going on amongst game developers, publishers, and consumers. All games aren't the same. I don't think all games should be the same price point. And so I think we really need to hold that line of different games are worth different amount of dollars or different expectations on what consumers pay. And it'd be great to see that acceptance across the consumers. Grand Theft Auto coming out, there's been discussion of $80 price point. To me, that's not shocking, and that should seem fair. Grand Theft Auto 5 has been around for over a decade. Why shouldn't I pay $80 for a game that I'm going to play for 10 years? And then why shouldn't I pay $20 for a game that offers me a smaller experience?
Yeah, even like Claire Obscura, the one game of the year last year, that was a lower price game, smaller team, and I agree with you that pricing variability. I think what you're saying is different business model for different styles of games. Laura, you last year had Battlefield that experiment. You had a premium game, you had a free-to-play version of it, whatnot. As EA looks at this, the sports business obviously is massive and whatnot. How do you think about sort of the business models for games? Is it sort of like every game may have a different approach, or how does EA look at it now?
It's certainly, structurally, it feels more expansive. We have to think about it in a more expansive way than we ever have. And I think we have to start with player behavior, player gaming patterns, and we're in such an interesting time in that generations of players are using games as their social connection, as their creative self-expression, as well as competing. And so you have to think about gaming and the experiences in a far more expansive way than perhaps we did 10 years ago. And to go compete together, to win together, to create together, to be these characters, to live in these worlds, is quite an expansive flywheel of experiences. When I think about Battlefield, yes, we had the premium version of the game, and then we had a creative tool called Portal as part of the game, and then we had a free-to-play mode. So I always thought about it as an ecosystem and a platform versus a game that
Many
goes
entry
out.
points into it,
Exactly, and it's so interesting now because we launched these games, and in the case of Battlefield, this team worked for well over 4 years. Thousands of people worked on this at EA, and you get ready for launch and you gear up for it. Like the old school days, like you have your TV ads, you have your video, you have your trailers, and all the things you're going out with. It's so exciting. Oh, but that's just the starting line. That's not the finish line. And so that is the first day of the rest of your life. You bring this experience to market, and you have to really seriously think about, okay, all of our game developers now, rest up, because we're going to be showing up daily, weekly, monthly for many years to come. You have games that have that are daily live services for many, many, many years. Yes. And so it is. The approach and how we think about players and the player engagement is so different today. And I think that there are multiple business models that can come from that and come from these vast experiences. And so I think it will be a combination. At least that's how we're thinking about it. And even when you look at geographic expansion, geographies will require different business models, so you can reach as many players as you possibly can in a certain region.
Johanna, you have such an interesting perspective with Blizzard and the history of, as Laura mentioned, World of Warcraft, all these, decades of these games have been around, and have these communities that really sort of love them. But how do you monetize them? How do you build content for them? I'm curious, like the Blizzard of today, how is that different than the Blizzard of before, and how you approach the business moving forward too?
Yeah, I'll pick up where Laura just left it. I think even thinking about strategic partnerships has been a big theme for us over the last couple of years, right? Over the last 30, Blizzard has become an icon in gaming and entertainment, but mostly homegrown in mentality, meaning sort of vertically approaching game development.
Yep.
From SoCal with other vectors in Korea and certainly China. Now we've sort of leveled that up to reactivate certain tentacles and major global partners across those regions. So our footprint in China that we turned back on, so to speak, over the last 2 years has been a massive part of the business, but also more importantly of community at scale, right? Korea also coming back in a big way, and we've recently announced some more strategic partnerships there, and we'll have myriad others. Obviously, our footprint in EMEA, I could go on. But why I would start there is I think having a global perspective to meet the moment of what Chinese Blizzard players and fans expect, creators, how content is disseminated, is going to look very different, even from a regulatory perspective, let alone how the creative comes through. What healthy development and healthy curation and publishing of content there looks like is going to be different than what we might do here in North America. We need to be poised structurally to be able to deliver at that pace and scale. So I'd say that's much more of a modern lens than sort of, let's see what happens with this World of Warcraft thing in 2004, and boom, oh my gosh, it's the biggest game of all time. And now they've got to sort of catch up to that post-launch velocity. Now we're sort of primed to do that on a day-to-day basis. The other thing I would say, because I think sometimes it's important, is, Donald, to your point, it's interactive, but I also think it's highly adaptive as a medium, meaning you need adaptive skill sets and mind share to sort of think about next month might look completely different than what we put on paper. And so when we're looking at teams, what the Overwatch team, which is a free-to-play, live ops game, and that's our bread and butter, and we know how to do that very well, might be very different than how the Diablo team of the future is going to think about their content model. It's not always the same anatomy of a team that we're going to hire for, right? And so when we think about, what it means to work across our different IP, it's actually not the same movie over and over again, or the same, record album, pick a different part of the industry. These things are very bespoke. And so a publishing team or a product management team or a tech team looking at a certain part of our portfolio, we may need to think very differently, be it mobile, be it platform, be it PC heavy. What a dynamic problem to have, but placing talent in the right spots to get after a more modern global Blizzard entertainment is a really big priority for me.
Leading off that, when I asked you, Laura, the opportunities, we talked a lot about, China, geographically. I wanted to ask sort of like, when EA looks at it, and all of you, like, where's the biggest sort of, outsized growth opportunity that everyone looks at right now globally? And then also platform-wise, mobile is something that and we have a panel. There's a little bit more PC console, but everyone's experimenting with mobile and whatnot. And I'm curious, like, is the mobile market still something that is massive for you guys? Is there growth there? Is there anywhere that you think people are maybe overestimating the opportunity? Laura, I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, I sized, when you think about, step back and look at the size of the opportunity, and I rattled off world population, close to 4 billion gamers around the world, new gamers being born every year. So when you just look at the pure addressable market, that is some really exponential and still really exciting growth. Geographically, there is significant growth and opportunity that remains in our industry. Gaming is in all corners of the globe today and emerging rapidly in some markets more than others. And so we have that ahead of us still, even though we, again, keep in mind we have close to 4 billion gamers playing games. And so geographically, there is a significant opportunity, and that comes through platforms. So there are close to 3 billion mobile gamers in the world. So mobile remains the largest platform, and I believe it will still continue to grow and still be meaningful because it's so accessible, and we can penetrate markets all over the world on that platform. And interestingly, and I don't know how widely known this is, but I'm sure everybody on the panel knows how strong PC is performing right now.
Right.
We're seeing a real resurgence, and a lot of energy on
Especially
the PC.
globally, right? China,
And
Steam, all
globally,
that. Yeah.
and it's global, and it's accessible. It has flexibility as a platform for developers and for players, and so I'm very optimistic about that as a place for us to continue to grow. And I would say that, the areas that, Geoff, you asked about where you overestimate or where you may miscall things, and this is true for the industry all this time, is that you look at new platforms, cloud gaming or VR, and people think, oh gosh, this is going to be the trigger that's going to unlock and unleash all this growth. And I think that those are meaningful platforms, and they will contribute meaningful growth, but it generally happens slower than expected. And I think that's going to be the case there. I think the most important thing that we do, and that we can do as an industry and as game creators, is meet players where they are, on the platforms they're playing on. And technology and innovation is actually going to allow us to create more personal experiences in regions and globally than we have in the past. And you mentioned, the business model for the Chinese Blizzard player is going to be different than perhaps the one in the US, and that's true for us. I know Electronic Arts, we think very differently about the furniture that a Sims player has in Poland may look different than it is in Korea than it is in the US. And so I think we have to get very personal about the content and show up for players. So I think the greatest growth potential really is about meeting them where they are on the platforms they're playing on in a more relevant way in their life. And so, and again, you put the numbers together of players, consumers, geography, and platforms, and there's a pretty significant runway still.
Donald, Infinity Blade, I remember back on mobile, that was a huge game that you guys did on stage with Steve Jobs, a long time ago. And then Fortnite obviously had, mobile versions, and now is back on iOS, at least for America and whatnot. But, when everyone talks about the global opportunity, I think of a global game, sort of like a Fortnite that really was sort of, so massive globally for everyone. How do you look at sort of like the opportunity moving forward for the industry? When you think, you think of it as content, I'm sure sort of like Laura said, it's sort of like, the platform is just a delivery mechanism for it. But do you get excited about sort of different, building games for different platforms in unique ways? Or
Absolutely, and I have my whole career, right? Yeah. Like I think it's incredible that we're all walking around with these extremely powerful computing devices in our pockets,
right.
and they've done so much to change literally every aspect of all of our lives in the last. It's been barely over 15 years since these happened in a meaningful way, and the planet is different forever because of it. And I just think that that is a massive opportunity for us to just, again, create new kind of experiences. Like Laura said, like meeting our audience where they're at and engaging them and entertaining them in ways that are appropriate, not just for what's in your pocket, but like even all the way back with Infinity Blade. I was looking at this thing going like, I wanted to make a more traditional kind of crazy actiony experience, but thinking of this as a controller, was very different than anything. So I'm like, I don't have buttons, I don't have anything I can click. Like, how do I design something that is really authentic for not just this input device, but for like how you use it, how long you use it, where you use it, when you use it. And even like with Fortnite, like I was trying more than anything. Like we call Fortnite a game, we call it whatever, but I was looking at it going, I was watching the way that my kids at the time were playing Destiny, or were playing World of Warcraft, or playing playing these games that I loved. And I'm like, how do I build a world that's a little more like a social platform, where you can just hang out with your friends and just kind of mess around with stuff. And so the reason why it was so important for me to put it on mobile as well, because I would see these moments happening where there'd be just all these teenagers sitting like in their living rooms, hanging out, and like some of them would be on Xbox, some would be on PlayStation, some of them would be on a PC, the rest of them would be on an iPad or an iPhone. And I'm like, this is how I can create the social situation of 2019, then going to COVID 2020. Like, how do I connect people? And so to me, it was like, how do I just create authentic and really meaningful engagement that's unique that's appropriate to the device you're using? And so some of the stuff that we're working on now, even in our film stuff with Joe and Anthony and I on Avengers Doomsday, like we're looking not at just like, how do we create the greatest film experience, but how are we creating stuff around what's appropriate and best for the device we want you to engage with it on? And I think that it's just a very different approach to how you build worlds at scale. And that doesn't, again, apply to every game, you know, but like a lot of the stuff that we are working on are again, some of these really truly interactive worlds. And I think you're approaching it just a little differently, right? Than
There's a lot of these like big franchises, and certainly, Johanna and Laura, you represent a lot of those big franchises. I think the core gaming audience, will play them on PC or console. There might be a different game that comes out for mobile, but it's not necessarily always one fully connected sort of universe or ecosystem. And I think, at least myself, it's like the core gaming audience isn't necessarily playing as much on their phone as they could if they had the right experience that sort of linked into games. Is that like an opportunity, an addressable market, do you think, moving forward?
It is, and it's something you have to be very strategic about, right? I'll just speak from a Blizzard lens, for example. We are known as a foremost PC developer. That's how we've grown up in the world, right? We have games on mobile, we have games on console, huge part of the pie, but like at the end of the day, that's been the sharpest part of the spear. So when we venture into mobile titles, we have to be very careful about, because there's a Blizzard halo around what do our consumers want to see from us? What IP do we attach that to? Because reach for reach's sake, not always the best, return on energy, frankly, regardless of investment. So thinking about our portfolio as let's make sure when we venture into new platforms, territories, meet people where they are, it's the right story we want to tell. And it's totally okay if it doesn't go gangbusters. Right. But let's just know, what we're doing very strategically and thoughtfully when we think about, okay, what's next for Overwatch beyond its current model, or what's next for Diablo Immortal, which is a current mobile title that's huge in other parts of the globe. So that part, I think, sometimes gets lost in translation of don't just do it because you think you can go get a new demo. Really, we have to really think about, is it good for the broader story we want to tell? And just to bring it back down to the community piece, BlizzCon being one of our like massive gatherings, right, that we're going to bring back online here in Anaheim. About 80,000 people will descend on Anaheim in mid-September, and we're going to get on stage and say a lot of things. Yeah. What we say, what we reveal, what we announce, what we promise to people is both in our Super Bowl in many ways, but also Super Bowl you have to get right? And so we think about even what do we showcase and what do we signal and what do we not maybe say on stage yet. Yeah. So we have to be really thoughtful about that piece.
Laura, for EA, when you look at the space, obviously you have these big franchises. I'm curious, like for a Battlefield player or a Sims player or people like that, like do you ever see, is mobile something that can kind of extend the experience of the same game, or this, where the mobile links to console and PC and whatnot? Because I think people instead of right now built sort of different experiences oftentimes, right? And sometimes like Fortnite's kind of the same game, right?
It was with Fortnite. I mean, again, and you were a big part of this, when we accidentally enabled crossplay in Fortnite, which wasn't something you were allowed to do at the time, where all of a sudden it could work on Xbox and PlayStation and mobile, and it just somehow we flipped the wrong switch. And and then we had conversations with all the console makers, and it broke down this huge wall that allowed that to happen, and I think was one of the more significant things we kind of accomplished with Fortnite. And on mobile specifically, it was hard. But I was like, I want to create it to be one-to-one. Like, I could be literally playing on my iPhone with someone who's playing on their Xbox. And there was a lot of, like, again, control things that were really hard to solve. But really why I wanted to do it is because I knew a big part of the Fortnite experience was, yeah, sometimes it's playing this battle royale thing, but a lot of what I was creating were these big kind of interactive, like, concerts and live events where you would show up and Travis Scott would be performing. And I'm like, I knew when stuff was going to be happening, I'd be bringing in a lot of people who might not even be kind of traditional gamers. They wouldn't even have the dexterity to, like, press a jump button, let alone move a camera. And so they're going to be coming on their phone where they're at. And I deliberately kind of, and even the stuff we worked on, Geoff, with, like, the Star Wars stuff, like, it was like, how do I make it in a way that's just really accessible to broad audience? And I know they're going to be using it on their phones. And so it's like, you're just kind of trying to design best to the experience you're trying to create. And not all experiences are the same, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just, like, I think to your point, right? It's like, not all even the kind of teams we build, it's a very different kind of, we're making lots of different kind of products. They're not all just games.
Yeah. No, I think you have to start with a quality experience, and how you're going to enhance your brand IP and just put your player at the center of your choices, your design, and the considerations. I believe that there are, and by the way, there are also unique and independent mobile experiences that have independence. You know, Galaxy of Heroes is one of the biggest, is the biggest Star Wars game that has ever been created, and it's on a mobile device. And Plants vs. Zombies is a brand that we love and we're super proud of at Electronic Arts, and it's a mobile native experience. Yep. And then when you think about Apex, Battlefield, our sports games, our Sims games, you know, as Donald's saying, could the mobile device be a complementary addition to creating something in The Sims that you then put into the experience? I think that when you try and have cross-play with mobile, and you have something that, like a Battlefield game or a sports game that's highly competitive, it disadvantages that experience. And so you just have to always put the player's best interest at the center. And I think even as we think even more expansively beyond the bounds of gaming platforms, there's also the conversation to be had around the extensibility of these IP and brands, right? So we're seeing a lot of games enter into the world of film, TV, streaming, which Donald is really involved with now in his new company. And I think that that when we think about, how do you celebrate these worlds, these stories, these characters, gaming is so unbelievably unique as an entertainment medium, because as a consumer of the medium, you walk through these worlds, you live these stories, you become these characters, and it's immersive like nothing else that exists. And we're entering into a space now where these adaptations are wildly successful. It's so fun to see movies, TV just being so successful, these game adaptations, and they are a very powerful marketing vehicle, very powerful. We get to broader reach, people re-engage in games, but that's not even the beginning of it. The beginning of it is when you can create content together on any platform and having these experiences. And so when you can stack a movie, a TV series, a theme park experience with this interactive experience simultaneously, and players who live these worlds and are these characters can actually experience their brand, their IP, and their characters in adjacent ways, in a similar way, it just creates this unbelievable force multiplier for an experience for a player. And that's where we're headed as an industry. So I think that, again, mobile being really important, and being, whether it's a unique large experience, whether it's a companion that helps your core game experience, or it is a cross-play experience and things that are less competitive, really powerful, really meaningful, but it's also part of the far bigger flywheel that could be created around our IP and our brands now.
So true.
Could I just say, I think that's really important, in terms of like opportunity and growth and meeting people where they are. I think we need to be continually thinking beyond the game and sort of into music, TV. Just like a couple personal things in terms of my family, I would say my daughter's awareness of League of Legends is because of music. Right. So she wouldn't have made the link to League of Legends if Imagine Dragons hadn't done a song that was linked to the game. My aunt's awareness of The Last of Us
Yep.
is because of the TV show.
Yeah.
She had no idea that there was a game that
Yep.
The Last of Us if she hadn't been in HBO watcher watching the TV show and then became aware of the game.
Yeah, no,
So-
as a marketing vehicle, I mean, I always remember, I think when it was the Witcher series first came on Netflix, one of the first adaptations, and that's all of a sudden the game developer sold millions of copies of the game, which was a 10-year-old game, right? Because people just found it. They said it's like as a vehicle to kind of build awareness, which I think is huge. I mean, it's exciting on one sense that there's, sort of these IPs get bigger and bigger, and there are more opportunities in the flywheel and whatnot. But there's also sort of the reality in the market right now that like AAA game budgets are ballooning to incredible numbers. I mean, I won't even ask Laura what Battlefield cost, but I know it was a lot of money. And it, yet, as Greg was saying, like on the other side of the market, there are all these small independent teams that are having this incredible success where it's, last year, I mean, the game that won Game of the Year was, 30 people in France that made a game for $10 million and was just incredible out of nowhere, right? So I'm curious, like, how do you square those two things? And I'm like, are the big game budgets, are they sustainable moving forward? And then, on the independent side, it's like, what's the opportunity there? How do big companies look at sort of the, you guys see that with, Path of Exile versus Diablo or something. I mean, you notice this, and like, what do you take away from that?
Yeah. To be brief, because I'm actually really curious what the rest of the panel has to say about this too. I do think there's a little bit sometimes a tendency for like the race to the easiest narrative. Like AAA is ballooned and it's dead and it's like indies are the future. And it's like neither of those are exactly true. And the truth is somewhere very much in the middle. Blizzard-wise, what I think is actually great is we have a catalog business that's almost, as big as, meaning long-standing titles in our catalog that have been alive and well for 20, sometimes 30 years now, in addition to anything net new that we might produce. And so we can think about what is our indie tier of development look like that can really move a community forward or deepen engagement or deepen that IP's conversation. And it's kind of small compared to maybe a AAA behemoth that we'll take forward. And so both is something that we get to kind of play in. And I think we have a deep appreciation for Clair Obscur or all the indie. I play them all. Like I'm obsessed with them and I think they're fascinating and important. And yet I think the marriage of there's a role for all of those tiers to play, and how do we, even as our own end-to-end company, think about what do we want to sort of station at the big budget level and give it everything we've got and go blockbuster with it, and what are these other things, whether we do again vertically
Or
partner, right? Licensing or other way JVs. There's a bunch of other ways we can partner with indies to support indie developers.
Let them use your IP to build something.
Right, and lean on Blizzard IP to sort of make a 1 + 1 = 3. So there's more to come on that, but it's something we take really seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, this is all opportunity, and to me, it's help. Like the fact that a Silk Song can exist, which is my favorite game that I've been obsessed with.
Made by 3 people.
Made by 3 people, right? Silk Song is this really deep, rich game that probably no one would have been even allowed to be made 10 years ago. Can be made, and it can sit alongside Battlefield 6, and all those things can exist, and they all can do well. Like to me, it's just the aperture of what can be created is wider than ever, and that will probably lead to the continued explosion and of the medium, right? Like that's like it's such an untapped field, and we're just starting to see it find these unique different lanes, and that I love because to me it almost felt like there was a version 15 years ago where it was getting a little rote, it was getting a little set. It's like you have to be in a box, you have to be on a shelf, and because of that, it has to be this, and instead. Everything went a different direction, and now we get to experience all these wonderful different things.
Yeah, and so I'd say from an investment standpoint, obviously we go through cycles, but in my mind, gaming content, you're always going to want exclusive content. You're always going to want compelling IP. So some of that's going to still be the AAA level coming out of the big publishers, but my belief is the publishers are going to consistently be looking for the new IPs that they want to acquire and bring into their fold. So. And you're always going to want the smaller teams building stuff that's exciting that the larger publishers are then going to acquire and own and then be able to scale into a larger IP or franchise that the smaller team won't be capable of doing amongst themselves.
What is the investment space for you when you look at like the indie scene? Like, is there a lot of activity there? I know some of these teams are so, sort of they do so well that they don't even need money, right? Because they sort of just like continue on and earn. But for new startups and stuff, like, is that an exciting space where you're spending a lot of time looking at like who are these teams? Because part of the thing is sometimes it's hard to identify them because they don't have biz dev people, they don't have marketing people, they just have 3 guys in a room making a game they put on Steam. So how do you find them? Like, where are those opportunities?
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously, like a lot of people, who are successful have been at it for years. So there's teams that have worked together. There's teams that come out of larger companies.
Yep.
So as it is, it's easier these days to create something in terms of a tech demo that you can see, the capability of where people are going. So it's not just an idea on a paper. There's often, something that's been built, has visions. Most people we look at, have been doing this for years, have built and shipped product or have built something, even if it's not been a successful blockbuster, you can see their capabilities in terms of what they've done. And that gives you the confidence to invest in them.
And I'm just going to plug you for a second because I think you and your platforms do a really good job of celebrating the spectrum, right?
Yes.
Summer Games Fest, TGAs, whatever it might be. And I'm not just saying it to say it. I think it's really important as we showcase. Sometimes you'll get one publisher's version of a showcase, and like you think that's gaming. I think your platforms have really broadened the sense of like, let's celebrate it all. There's room for everybody to sort of be honored here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also level playing field. What I love is, like as Donald said, you have Hideo Kojima, and then you have 2 guys from southern France. They can be like and it's like I think it's in the audience, as you were saying. I mean, that's part of the thing is like they just love gaming content, right? And it's sometimes it is some multi-$100-million blockbuster, but also they love just the twitch of something. And the fact that those can all be embraced, and I don't think, as you said, it's a race to like everything's going indie and we don't know the big stuff. It's just there's a balance there, right? Which is part of the challenge. We're gonna get some questions, so the QR code is up there. If you guys have any questions, we'll get to those in a second. But I wanted to build on that transmedia thing that you were talking about, Laura, and you're absolutely right. There's so much of that, but also the idea of gaming being at this intersection of technology and entertainment. I think there's such opportunity there, not just to just have the adaptation, but have a two-way street, right? Where sort of what's happening in the game is happening in the show, or even the assets that they're using for the visual effects in a film can be in a game. And I mean, that's sort of the holy grail, right? That everyone is sort of reaching towards, where it is this ongoing experience where you have, episodes of a TV show, and while they're producing the next season, you're playing a game or the story is continuing there. People have talked about that for decades. Donald, I know that's something that you've been very passionate about, of building that. Is that the next sort of frontier, sort of I mean, there are lots of frontiers in gaming, but is that the thing that you're most excited about, is these sort of worlds coming together?
It's certainly the thing I'm most excited about and passionate about and actively working on. No, because I think, so the way I look at it is I look at a lot of I'm kind of going to make up a term here, the generational franchises that really, and probably inspired a lot of us when we were young. Things like Star Wars or Harry Potter or whatever, like Marvel, all, that they came from source material that was a little more traditional, right? And I really believe that the next generational franchises are going to be birthed as video games, right? Because we really are in the business of really, really deeply thinking through not just how do you create a singular expression of a thing. We're more in the pursuit of how do you create entire worlds, and how do you fill those worlds with interesting characters and interesting stories and interesting places. And so I think that just kind of naturally leads to it being kind of this hub of really great intellectual property that then wants to go be expressed in other mediums, and kind of any medium. And I believe that's where the future greats, the Star Wars and where are going to be birthed. And that's our awesome opportunity. I am, again, I kind of have been very fortunate in my last 30 years to have created some of these IPs that are beloved by hundreds of millions of people. And I kind of got to a point a couple years ago, again with my partners Joe and Anthony Russo, who directed some of the biggest movies of all time, with the Avengers movies and things like that. And we were all looking at each other a couple years ago going, okay, well, should we all just sit on a beach for the rest of our life? Like, is this it? Do we just just go chill and we're good? or what if there's this other thing? Like, what if there is what you just said? Like, everyone's talked about it forever, but it's like, do you really embark on that idea from the ground up to go, can you design a world, characters, things that are actually contemplating all these mediums from the ground up? And are there things you need to do a little differently if that's your pursuit? And so I'm actively working on it. I think there's lots of other people actively working on it. Just sitting right here, right now.
Right.
We're all actually big fans of each other, you know, and we all want to be working together on this. Again, I think this kind of next evolution of our medium. And so, yeah, man, it's coming and it's going to be unbelievable.
It is. I
Hear, hear.
love all of that, what you said. And one other dimension that I'll add, which I know you think about a lot, Donald, too, is that in this future world where transmedia and the convergence of these mediums coming together, one of the most compelling or meaningful parts of gaming, it's my favorite part about gaming, is the voice of the player in the experience. And so we now have these live services, as I mentioned. Starting line, not the finish line. You start showing up for players every day. And so not only can we bring these mediums together, but we can also interact with player and consumer reaction and respond. And so with the evolution and innovation in technology and our ability to show up faster for the consumer, they can actually have a voice and agency in how these experiences are expressing themselves.
Exactly.
It is such an exciting time that way.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the days, we'd work for 4 years to create a game, spend a lot of money, put it out, and then we'd say, okay, we'll see you in another couple years. Well, now we talk to players hourly, daily, weekly, and they can influence us about how to steer an experience. Now, we still have to show up and provide quality and still surprise and delight them, and we will. And they get to inform us about what they like, don't like, and we can adjust and tweak as we go. And it's such an interesting time that way.
I love what you said. Like, so in my made-up version of history, like the day that we invented fire, like that night, someone told the first story. And it was the best story ever told because it was the first story, right? And the reason why it was the best is because every joke worked or whatever, but also because the audience was part of it.
Yeah.
Like storyteller was looking across the fire and they could see what was working, what wasn't. Someone would say something and they would incorporate that into what the story was, right? And ever since then, like we've been trying to get back to the campfire, right? Like how do you get that level of true immersion and participation? Mm-hmm. And that is what we are working on doing, like all the time, right? Getting back to the campfire.
Yep.
Back to the campfire. All right, we got some questions from the audience. There's some skeptics out there, I think.
Always
I think we're almost out of time. Oh, we're out of time.
Guided under the anonymity of the QR code. But all right, first question for our panel is, to what extent are you all baking in a world in which consumers can create their own games with AI? At what point do you think this could truly come to fruition?
For everyone?
Yeah, sure.
We're focused more on the tools and the tech from a developer perspective, and how that's going to flow through making artists' lives happier, quicker, more interesting. We vet and secure all the work when we think about new innovation and technology. Obviously, in this age of AI, that topic has taken on its own sort of velocity as well. But we embrace being at the frontier. Gaming has always been at the bleeding edge of where art and craft and tech come together. I feel that AI is no different other than the way in which we can steward it responsibly. So we're just focused on making sure if our devs and our artists and our creatives want to use the next tool in the toolbox, let's empower them to do so and do it securely and safely. From a consumer perspective, we're excited. I think, creation and creativity is just going to take a whole new inflection point with respect to new tools. And net, we want to be, again, at the forefront of that conversation and enable people to get into Blizzard IP sandboxes and craft the next generation of consumer creativity. But I think we're poised to be able to think about that because we've, frankly, always, as an industry, have been thinking about that edge.
Yeah, and I think, like when I started making games, the tools and the software and the computers you needed to even embark on something as complicated as making a video game was hundreds of thousands, actually millions of dollars. You needed millions of dollars just to even have the hardware and the software to do it. But because of amazing tools like the Unreal Engine, like Blender, I could list off so many tools. Like the barrier to making a video game today is not just the lowest it's ever been, it's really low. You can be a 10-year-old in your basement and you can actually make games now for free. Like you can get access to the tools, and the tools are just going to get better and better, and AI, just like anything else, is another tool that we are still developing and learning, and will probably allow even more of that kind of democratization of access to what you need to actually make something.
Yeah, but you can't, as has been said, you can't lose the art and the creativity here.
Yeah.
I've been pitched many games, that are fueled by AI.
Yeah.
None of them I would play for more than 10 seconds. So yes, you can make a game with AI. Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be compelling? Is it going to draw someone in? A lot of that is still up to the people and the individuals today.
Just because you have Photoshop doesn't mean you're an amazing photographer.
Yeah.
Games are entertainment. Entertainment is emotional and personal and human, and it always will be. And I like what you're saying about it, the democratization and enablement. I think that's where we're headed. And as we come back to the optimistic view of things, it will only make our audiences larger and more engaged than they've ever been.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going through every AI question here. Let's see. All right, a question for Johanna and Laura. How does EA and Blizzard avoid optimizing for short-term monetization and engagement metrics at the expense of long-term cultural relevance?
That is the job. I mean, we talk about that every single day. And if you have great thoughts, please send me a note. But no, look, I mean, we've been on the map for 30 years. We, God willing, we'll be on the map for 30 more, and thrivingly so. And I think so much of it is skill set. We've got longstanding, the greatest creatives, EA notwithstanding, but the greatest creatives in the industry who have been doing this at the highest caliber of world-class development and non-development and all the things in between for as long as we can remember. So talent really puts us in a position to win when we have to be in different time dimensions simultaneously. I've got folks who are thinking about today and our daily active users across the globe and what it means to make sure we're meeting them across every vector you can imagine. I've also got others who are thinking about 3 years from now and 5 years from now, and the investment thesis has to hold together. But that's the job. I mean, I think we're a very left brain, right brain company, and I try to hire for both so that we're always kind of looking at things from both angles. And making sure that we're just unlocking the best in creativity. Great creativity also doesn't happen overnight. You need to let artists bake and think and play a little bit with their ideas, and then have the systems and the infrastructure and the models and the marketers and the communications to support that endeavor. So it's complex, but I think that's the thing that makes it so dynamic and interesting. So we obsess our P&L. That's my job, to make sure that we're investment grade and continue to be highly successful both commercially and creatively. But so far, so good.
Yeah, similar. We have a lot of responsibility around the P&L. We have tremendous talent at Electronic Arts, and that's what I spend the majority of my time, is spending time inspiring our leaders and our creative teams around the globe. And their north and their center, and the center of gravity for us, is really our player. And if our player remains our north and we stay in touch with them, you won't stray too far from the center about what motivates them and making judgment calls around business models and creativity and content and frequency and depth of the content. And so, just like Joanne, I spend a lot of my time with the wickedly talented teams at Electronic Arts, so they are in service of our players. And as long as you have them at your center, they won't let you stray too far from where you're supposed to be going.
Another question, which I think is appropriate given sort of the state of the market overall. Someone asked, can you comment on the PC market impacts of the global RAM shortage due to AI and also, rising console prices, right? I mean, we're seeing, PlayStation, Xbox actually be more expensive when they launch, right? The traditional model, obviously, in consoles is they're reduced down, but given sort of the state of the world and memory, how does that? I mean, obviously it impacts the business, but is there, what's the sort of the long-term sort of, how does it affect your business, and also what do you think it means for the market overall? Anyone? Greg, you want to start with me, or?
I mean, yeah, I guess there is some impact, but as we've stated, gaming is global. The largest gaming audience is mobile.
Yeah.
So, in the big scheme of things, gaming is still accessible everywhere. The consoles, are important, but PC is bigger, in terms of accessibility. And I think, games are available anywhere. People have, figured out how to get games running browsers, low tech. Not everything is built for the high-end PC device, so there's tons of games and opportunities that you don't need the latest spec to play on, and that's probably the majority of the gaming market these days. So I think there is some impact, but it doesn't really worry me. And if you listen to what's going on, in terms of job creation, what people are talking about, well, there's massive demand to, meet that hardware demand, which will probably be solved in the next year or two. So it's probably a blip.
Next question, this is for Donald maybe. Can you share your thoughts on the season model that seems to be everywhere in gaming nowadays? To me, seasons damage the storytelling experience by transforming a story into a cash grab. Care to comment on your experience?
Again, I think not everything applies to everything, right? Not every experience wants to be a seasonal experience. In my very specific approach to Fortnite, that was something that I wanted that structure because the experience I was creating and literally the story I was telling kind of wanted that pacing to it. But I do think there's a lot of room to still innovate in not just business model, but in the format and how we deliver these experiences. Not again to think that it's now set where it's like, okay, it's either going to be a 10-hour or 20-hour or 30-hour more like more contained experience, or it's going to be this massive live service thing that is engineered to go on forever. Like it's not that extreme, and it will not be that extreme. I think that new things will come. One of the next things I'm working on. I'm not going to talk about it yet, but
Go ahead.
No, but that is a central question to how not a question. It's something that we're actively building into the rhythm and the pacing of the story we want to tell, because we have a really interesting story that we're developing, and the best way to tell it is in kind of a certain format. And so that's the format I'm going to use to tell that story. And so it has less to do with like everything needs to be seasonal or everything needs to be that, and it's more like what's the best thing for the audience, right? And in all aspects, like what's the best way to give the experience that we want to create to the audience and then sustain that correctly. So doing anything the wrong way ruins it for the audience. Right?
Almost gave us a scoop, but he caught himself.
No, I got it.
All right, well, that is all the time we have. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to the panelists.